Okay. Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, I had a very kind of different reaction. I mean, I'm not disputing any of what you said. All of that is factually accurate, in terms of the structure and the pacing and what happens. Um, I think responded to it very differently.
You're wonderful to see. You ought to be in pictures. Oh, what a hit you would be.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. My name is James, joined as ever by my good friend Steve. And this episode, we are talking about Sean Baker's Anora.
Hey, but before we talk, Anora, if you haven't already subscribed, it'd be a great favor to us if you did. Just go ahead and ding that little bell, hit the subscribe button, and that way you'll know every time we drop a new film. James, I know you loved Anora. I went in wanting to love it. I did not like this as much as you did. I'm not saying I didn't like it, but we're on different wavelengths on this one.
Okay, well, why don't you start and you tell me what, the problems you had with it or whatever, and I'll tell you why you're wrong.
No, and I know I'm wrong because obviously this won the Palme d'Or at Cannes. Let
me get straight into that before we do that, because that's interesting that you cite that as the first thing, because the Palme d'Or at Cannes, sure, yes, it's a very nice, pretty accolade to get, and it gives you a lot of exposure and a lot of clout for the rest of the season. However, it's not the be all and end all of everything. Simply because, unlike, let's say, something like the Oscars, which are voted on by the Academy year on year, and yes, membership just does fluctuate slightly, but it's pretty much the same body of people, so you can have some degree of consistency. The Palme d'Or is a jury-based prize, and every year the jury is completely different. The films are hand-selected by the same couple of people, by the Cannes, selection committee, but then the jurors are completely different, and they're all from all over the world. They're from different areas of the film industry. You'll have actors, directors, whatever, all big-egoed people, all thrown in a room together with language barriers and all the rest of it, and they have to come to some kind of consensus. So, in years, I'm not saying that this is true this year, but in years past, there have certainly been times when it wasn't the best film that won the Palme d'Or, but rather the one they could all kind of agree on. Okay, so it might be like their second favorite or whatever. And also, some of these people just have really bad taste in movies. So there are some years where the jury is really on point and really good, and they make very, very intelligent, informed decisions. There are other times where it feels like a compromise, and other times where they're just way off, plain wrong. So, not saying that any of that necessarily applies to Anora, but that's the baggage that winning the Palme d'Or brings with it.
And now back to our regularly scheduled program.
Sorry, that's a massive little detail.
Just
before we hit play, we're like, okay, let's keep this on track, right? Yeah, we'll keep this short. And I was like, hang on a minute, straight away.
No, it's because I'm feeling a little under the weather. I said, James, let's just keep this one a little tighter because I got to crawl back into bed. I'm not feeling well. No tangents today. But no, that was actually very informative and helped me out. Anora, this is an intense film, well acted. The characters are fantastic. I mean, I'm not going to say that I didn't enjoy the film, but there is going to be some daylight, I think, between you and me. Okay. For the first 40 minutes, there's a lot of sex. And I'm not put off by that, but there's a lot of sex. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's sex here, there's sex there, there's sex there, there's sex this way, there's sex that way. So there's going to be a lot of that. And then for the next 20 minutes, there's a lot of screaming. I mean, a lot of screaming. I mean, it got to the point what I wanted to yell at the screen, would somebody shut her up? Because it's driving me crazy. It really was affecting me as a viewer, that there wasn't just one encounter where the thugs and Anora are going, F you, no, F you, no, F your mother, no, F, no, get your hands off me. And then it's done in 30 seconds. This goes on and on and on. And then when all the thugs show up, the main Toro shows up, they go on the next 10 to 15 minutes of the film are them just going into every possible way Vanya's character could be hiding out. I felt like I was watching this in real time. They would go here, they would go there. Have you seen this guy? Have you seen this guy? And then they do it again, and then they do it again, and then they do it again, and then they do it again. And so there's elements of this film that didn't work for me. I thought the timing, the pacing was difficult. I know I kind of guess what they were trying to establish in this, but as the film viewer, I wasn't liking every aspect of it.
Okay. Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, I had a very kind of different reaction. I mean, I'm not disputing any of what you said. All of that is factually accurate, in terms of the structure and the pacing and what happens. I think responded to it very differently. I mean, you're right. Yeah, the first 40 minutes, there's a lot of sex, there's a lot of nudity because our main character, Annie or Anora, played by Mikey Madison, is a stripper. She's a Brooklyn girl. She works at a strip club in Manhattan. And I mean, the opening shot is this just tracking shot across a series of lap dances, just like these seats, side by side by side with just a skimpy little curtain separating them. And I think it's a beautiful portrayal of just how unsexy these situations are.
Yes.
Where you're getting a lap dance, it's supposed to be this very intimate, sort of sensual, raunchy kind of thing. But because you're just sat right next to if you're the recipient, you're sat right next to some other rando, and you're all just having your sort of little moment, but there's nothing private about it, really. I thought was really kind of just well introduced. It was like, here's the reality of the world in which she is functioning, and that whole sort of first half an hour where you're just following her around the club as she's just sort of approaching, which apparently I read, I heard about afterwards, was all shot live with no script, all improvised with just radio mics from a distance, multiple cameras for about half an hour, 40 minutes. And she's just working around the room, going up to people and people. She knows which people are actors that can improvise with her and which aren't. And then they just chop that whole thing down into sort of 2 or 3 minutes of this one sort of roaming shot round. I thought it was done sort of incredibly well, and I didn't know that until afterwards. Then yes, obviously she gets into this very passionate, very steamy relationship with this young guy who all he wants to do is have sex all the time, even though he doesn't really know what he's doing. And I thought there's a lot of comedy in that. There was a lot of humor in those interactions, in those sequences where he has all the power in one regard, but she has all the knowledge on the other hand. And I thought it made for a really sort of quite sort of sweet and funny interactions. And then I think the hugely intense screamy bit you're talking about is a kind of abduction. It's a kind of kidnapping, really, where the powers that be descend upon them and they're like, okay, we need to stop all of this, pump the brakes right now. Which again, I found quite funny. I found her her completely brazen lack of. I mean, you're really scared for her because these are thugs who work for a Russian oligarch, and it's wholly conceivable that she could be disappeared in the East River at any moment. That they could just get rid of her permanently to fix the problem in the cheapest way imaginable. So she is in genuine peril, and the fact that she's only in her underwear as well just kind of adds to it, particularly when you've got these big men and they're having to physically restrain her and all that. But just her approach to it, her complete no nonsense, screaming in your face, go fuck you, blah, 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 all of this to these big guys who could quite easily kill her at any moment. I was just like, you go, girl. This is excellent.
Well, that's one of the areas I did like, is how they subvert kind of the idea, because we've seen so many films with the Russian thug who is just like Drago from Rocky IV. I would break you. And they are these immovable, emotionless people who just kill with no thought whatsoever. And these guys are the complete opposite. They're bumbling. They're real people. They goof, they don't know what to do with the screaming lady. They're not going to kill her. And so I do appreciate how they subverted some of those notions of these just Russian mob guys are just going to kill her, but they're not going to, because she's married to this guy and they're in America. It's like you can only stack up so many dead bodies. And is this the dead body we want to have? Probably not. And so we have to subdue her. And so there was elements that were funny. It just, I'm trying to redeem myself a little bit, where I did enjoy it, but I found aspects of it grating on me.
No, it's totally fine. I mean, you said I kind of disagree with what you're saying, where you're like, it's America, you can't do this in America, you can't do it to someone like this. It's like, I think one of the things that the film does so well is it humanizes somebody who is essentially disposable. I think the biggest thing working against Annie is that she is nobody. She will not be missed. Outside of work, there's like her sister who knows her, and that's it. And that if they did want to get rid of her, they could easily, and there would probably be no ramifications whatsoever. And I think, but what the film is interested in doing is humanizing her, and I think does a fantastic job of doing it. One of obviously the big messages is you shouldn't judge a sex worker on the fact that they're a sex worker. She is a person as well, and this is her very, very sort of human, very honest reaction and response to an incredibly unbelievable situation,
as opposed to the judgment you'd have of a Russian oligarch's 21-year-old, because that's spot on, man.
Absolutely. I mean, he is such a dick, just a spoiled little brat. He's a child.
He's just a child. All he wants to do is have sex, like you said, and play video games. Video games and sex. That's all he wants to do. And
I think they give him just enough that you're like, okay, you can see why. I mean, obviously Annie is doing this for the opportunity, but at the same time, you're like, you could kind of see how she might get along with him. They seem to like each other genuinely.
Yeah, he can be fun, and she's, like you said, she's knowledgeable. He kind of respects the fact that she kind of is aware of things that's going on around.
She's got street smarts. Yeah,
she's got street smarts. And this would be the point to mention. There's some homages to Pretty Woman in this.
Oh, sure.
Where can I buy you for? I mean, I just want to, after we have sex, can I just be exclusive with you? And the whole thing where 10,000, 15,000. I would have done it for this. I mean, it's right out of Pretty Woman.
Absolutely.
And as soon as she said, or he said, I would have paid more, I thought, oh, that's Richard Gere. Of course, this kid is no Richard Gere, but
sure. Nor is he referencing Pretty Woman. He's probably never seen Pretty Woman.
No, he's not. But yeah. But the actor who plays him, though, is brilliant. I thought it was fun watching. His immaturity is played so lovably. At first, it's hard not to kind of like him, even though he's an idiot. It's only later in the film that you think, yeah, he really is an idiot.
Yeah, and I for me, that's the film's biggest strength, is that you have all of these characters which have so often been treated as sort of one-dimensional stereotypes. All of them, like the stripper, the spoiled oligarch son, the Russian thugs, you name it. All of those, we know the archetype. And what the film does so well is it subverts that archetype.
Yeah,
it is so much more interested in developing these characters, humanizing all of these characters, to the point where I think in the end, the most sympathetic character, quite possibly, is one of the thugs. Is Igor, the young bald guy who, from the very first moment when the two of them are left together, and he's just like, "Hi." You're just like, oh, okay, there's something,
he's got a bit of a crush here. He's got a bit of a crush.
Yeah, he's an interesting character. I mean, I will be honest. I mean, I came into this movie with a predisposition to like it, I think.
Yeah.
Because I've been a fan of Sean Baker's work since the beginning, really. He did Starlet and Tangerine and The Florida Project and Red Rocket, all films I love all of them.
Right.
I really appreciate how he uses kind of non-professional actors or non-actors completely, and how he often deals with the sort of sex workers and the sex industry in really interesting ways. He's sort of determined not to demonize characters like that, and but does so in a way that doesn't feel like he's letting them off the hook either. He's just this is just it's just matter of fact. It's just unvarnished daily life. Your job does not define you, nor should it, and all of that kind of stuff. And I really have always sort of admired his work, and he does it with a sincerity and authenticity, a beauty, but also with a great deal of humor and heart. And I feel that this just has all of those. I mean, I really did like this very, very much. I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing it again, and I'll be interested to see how much of it stands up to a second viewing, because I think for long periods of it, you are invested because you're so worried for her, because you don't know how this is going to turn out. Now that you do, will it pay off in the same way?
Yeah.
Remains to be seen.
Apparently, Sean Baker, whose real life wife produced the film, they actually showed the characters of Anora and Vanya the intimate scenes they wanted them to act out, because they're real life husband and wife. They would say, okay, this is the position we want to see you in.
Oh, that's funny.
And so they could do that as husband and wife. And apparently they were offered an intimacy coordinator, but because they had become such good friends and trusted one another, they did it without an intimacy coordinator, if I read that correctly. And so I thought that's pretty daring, because some of these scenes were extremely intimate. I mean, we're talking porn adjacent.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, I mean, and you understand why they've gone that far with it, because she is so comfortable in her own skin.
Yeah.
And he is so just irrepressibly horny all the time. It would have felt disingenuous, I think, if she was either always in a bra or, they were under the sheets or something. It's just like, no, that's not how this is going to play out. She's going to be just walking around naked, and they are going to be like rotting on every piece of furniture or whatever. And that's what they do, so it's commendable. And I think you have to give full props to the actors just for going there. I mean, Mikey Madison wasn't on my radar before this. I mean, she absolutely is now, and I think she's going to be like a very strong contender for like best actress at the Oscars this year. But looking back, I realized, I have seen her in stuff before. She was in one of the new Scream movies. And she's also in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. She's one of the.
Recognize her from there. Yeah, I did. Recognize
her probably because she was on fire in that movie. She's one of the gang, the Manson gang that come to the house at the end, and she's the one in the pool that gets the flamethrower from DiCaprio. So you're like, okay, so she hasn't kind of come out of nowhere, but at the same time, it's very interesting, and she's done some TV as well. But it's very interesting that she was willing, rather than go, oh no, I want to take a more conventional route, do some rom-coms, and try and be the next, I don't know, Sydney Sweeney or whoever. She's decided, no, I'm going to do this. This is obviously far more confrontational, but has really paid off. She is absolutely fantastic. Her accent is flawless, and that's not her real accent at all. She's a California girl.
Yeah, she practiced that Brooklyn accent.
Jimmy, the girls and I have been talking, and if your cousin doesn't start showing us some respect, we're not going to tip out anymore.
All right.
And she had that, and it is not that I'm an expert on a Brooklyn accent, but it sounded pretty authentic to me.
For sure. Yeah, no, it's the same. But I know when it's going wrong, I think.
Yeah.
And so it's just all of the pieces coming together. And then, we are a spoiler show, when the parents finally do show up, when the oligarch and his wife, they're brilliant. They're perfect. She's a complete battle axe. And his response when Annie literally throws her insults back in her face and says, the only reason your son did this is because he fucking hates you, basically. And the father just can't help himself. He's not on her side, but he cannot help himself. He just pisses himself laughing. As they're forcing her into this sort of annulment of the marriage. It's so good.
But then she kind of ends up with Boris a little bit. Or Igor.
Boris. God, look at you. But
sorry, I fell into a stereotype there. Boris and Natasha.
I mean, and it's a really interesting way to play it, because on the one hand, they have become genuine allies, during the course of this. He has turned into some kind of sort of protector for her. You look at them as a couple and you're like, well, I can't really necessarily see this working. Although at the same time, they're kind of on a similar social status. I mean, he'll probably have to quit his job and go do something else if they are going to hang out.
After that last encounter. Yeah.
But for me, the icing on the cake is that he has the ring.
Yeah.
That he picked up the ring and he gives it, because that's got to be, what was that, 4 carats? That's got to be worth
that's
a good
huge amount of money. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so it's like, here you go. You haven't come out, you've come out of this emotionally distraught, but you've turned a corner. This is a real opportunity for you, and so there is a silver lining. And it ends not with a celebration, but with just a complete deflation and collapse.
Yes.
And you're just kind of and that, or again, it just feels more genuine. It feels more authentic, and you're just kind of like, she can, she can celebrate a bit later, when she's pulled herself back together and gone down the pawn shop or whatever. But for now, you're just, you've been so embarrassed, you've been so heartbroken, you've been so put through the ringer. The only thing you can do now is just completely break down.
Yeah, there is that transition. She goes from saying, I'm his wife, we're in love, to the slow realization she married an idiot.
Yeah.
And,
who has no agency over his own decisions, really.
No, he's as captive as anyone in those situations. So,
well, that's a very good way of putting it. arguably he is more captive in this situation than she is. She is the one who can walk away from it. He can't.
Free. Yeah. He's tied up forever. So, well, James, what unit of measure are we going to give for Anora?
Should we go with diamond rings?
Let's go with the diamond rings. How many? You're obviously going to score a little higher than me. Why don't you go ahead and you love this film a little bit more?
I do. It's one of my favorites of the year. It went sort of straight into my top 5 as soon as I saw it. I was just like, this is great. I'm really looking forward to seeing it again. I really hope it does hold up. But this is going to be in my top 10, or even maybe my top 5, maybe even vying for the top spot right now. There's 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 films all like in a circle right now, in a ring, if you like. And it depends on
a diamond ring.
Exactly. So I am going not 4 but 5 carats. I'm going all 5. This really was one of the best films of the year so far for me.
Okay, fantastic. Obviously, I'm not going to go that high. I was thinking 3, but to be honest, after our little back and forth, I remember there's aspects of this film I did really enjoy, and so I'm going to give it 3.5. This is a 3.5 for me. My recommendation: go see it. But if you're anything like me, and maybe it's because I'm a little on the spectrum, and those noises just grate on me. And
you're just a sensitive soul that doesn't like seeing boobies. Is it as simple as that? Maybe. I don't know.
Actually, that was the part I liked. It was the screaming that really, and it never seemed to end for about 20 minutes in the middle of that. So. But I
just liked what she was saying half the time. It was just so funny. She was just so in your face. She had to be so bold in those moments. Otherwise, who knows?
Well, that's what James and I feel about Anora, the Palme d'Or winner at this year's Cannes. But what say you? Obviously, there's a little daylight in the way we view this film. Do you like it as much as James? Is it one of your top films of the year? Or are you more like me? Yeah, go see it, but probably not going to make the top 10. James?
That's right. Yeah, please join me in explaining to Steve why he's wrong, why it is one of the best films of the year, why it deserves all the prizes and the accolades that it's getting, why it should go into the award season as one of the biggest contenders for all the top prizes come Oscar season. And if you're a fan of Sean Baker's work like me, if there's any other Mikey Madison performances that I haven't seen that you recommend, do let me know. Thank you for watching.
Till next episode.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
You're wonderful to see. You ought to be in pictures. Oh, what a hit you would be. You're